Good morning, everyone. Yesterday, we had discussed about the phases in the expansion of democracy, right? How democracy has expanded and how it is different from the map which we have seen, right? The maps of 1900, 1950, 1975, and 2000. So, phases in the expansion of democracy, the beginning. These maps do not tell us much about what happened before the 20th century, meaning, right? Though they are showing the countries to be democratic, but are they telling you whether universal adult franchise was given to all the citizens of the country, right? There is a criteria like in India, all adults of who are of age 18 or above age 18 have been given the right to vote. But at that time, when countries were fighting for democracy, when countries were even attaining democracy, what happened was not everyone was given the right to vote. Especially women were excluded, and women had to fight their own revolution to gain that right to vote. Also, non-property men, people who didn't had any property, were also not allowed to vote in the beginning. So these maps do not tell us much about what happened before the 20th century. The story of modern democracy began at least 2 centuries ago. You may have read the chapter on the French Revolution of 1789 in the history book of this course. This popular uprising did not establish a secure and stable democracy in France. Throughout the 19th century, democracy in France was overthrown and restored several times. Remember, firstly, when they fought, that was in 1789, right? For democracy, they ended up with dictatorship. When dictatorship was removed, they ended up with monarchy. And monarchy was removed, then they got independence, and that too, every time there was a threat to that democracy, that independence. But still, the French Revolution had inspired many struggles for democracy all over Europe. In Britain, the progress towards democracy started much before the French Revolution. But the progress was very slow. Through the 18th and the 19th centuries, series of political events reduced the power of monarchy and feudal dues. The right to vote was granted to more and more people. Around the same time as the French Revolution, the British colonies in North America declared themselves independent in 1776. Now, if you remember, these are those 13 colonies, right, to whom Louis XVI has helped gain independence. And that is why most of the economy was even drained in this war also. Why? Because France helped America gain independence, right? And so economically France was drained. In the next few years, these colonies came together to form the United States of America. They adopted a democratic constitution in 1787. But here too, the right to vote was limited to very few men. In the 19th century, struggles for democracy often centered around political equality, freedom, and justice. One major demand was the right for every adult citizen to vote. Now, many European countries that were becoming more democratic did not initially allow people to vote. In some countries, only people owning property had the right to vote. Often, women did not have the right to vote. In the United States of America, the blacks all over the country could not exercise the right to vote until 1965. Those struggling for democracy wanted this right granted universally to all adults, men or women, rich or poor, white or black. This is called universal adult franchise. Now, these are now years have been mentioned and countries have been mentioned. And what does this tell? It tells which countries have given universal adult franchise in which year. Like New Zealand was the only country which has properly given right to vote to everyone, right? And if you compare it with the maps which we have seen, you will see The countries are democratic there, but universal adult franchise have been granted much later. Now, as you can see, by 1900, New Zealand was the only country where every adult had voting right. But if you go back to the map, you can see many other countries are marked as democracies by the beginning of the 20th century. These countries had by then governments elected by a significant number of people, mostly men, and granted political freedom in some measure. Means even the governments which were being formed in this country, because they have not given universal adult franchising, not everyone was given the right to vote. Means so even the government which was being selected, it thought of benefit only of few, right? Only limited section of the society was happy with those kind of government. Why? Because you have not given voting right to everyone, right? If out of 100 only 20% people had the voting right, and those 20% people will only vote and form a government, so that government, right, will be selected according to the will of those 20% only. So that government will think only about 20%. What about the 80%? They will suffer. Now, end of colonialism. For a very long time, most countries in Asia and Africa were colonies under the control of European nations. People of the colonized countries had to wage struggles to achieve independence. Whether it was Africa or India, both had to undergo a long freedom struggle to gain independence. They not only wanted to get rid of their colonial masters, but also wished to choose their future leaders. Our country was one of the few colonies where people carried a nationalist struggle to liberate the country, to free the country from the colonial rule. Many of these countries became democracies immediately after the end of the Second World War in 1945. India achieved independence in 1947 and embarked on its journey to transform itself from a subject country to a democracy. It continues to be a democracy. Most former colonies did not have such a good experience. Means there were, right, like India gained independence in 1947. So since 1947, from 1947 till date, India is a democratic country only. But there are many countries who would have gained independence, but later on, their independence was taken away. Like I have given you one example of Chile itself. Chile was a democratic country, yeah, right, led by Salvador Allende. It was a democratic country. People were very happy with the ruler because the ruler was elected by the people. But later on, that democracy was overthrown and military dictatorship was stored in France, right? So like Chile, there are many other countries as well who were democratic earlier, but later on that democratic freedom was taken away. In case of Ghana, a country in Western Africa, illustrates the more common experience of former colonies. Ghana used to be a British colony named Gold Coast. It became independent in 1957. It was among the first countries in Africa to gain independence. It inspired other African countries to struggle for freedom. Kwame Nkrumah, son of a goldsmith and himself a teacher, was active in the independence struggle of his country. After independence, Nkrumah became the first prime minister and then president of Ghana. He was a friend of Jawaharlal Nehru and an inspiration for democrats in Africa. But unlike Nehru, he got himself elected president for life, like what happens in India, right? Elections for prime minister, elections for chief minister, they are held every 5 years. So even the governments, they are in a constant fear that if they do not work for the benefit of the people, right, people will not vote for them. Government has to convince its citizens, its voters, that yes, we are doing things in your favor. We are doing things according to the benefit of the country and according to your own benefit. But what happened in case of Nkrumah? He got himself elected as a president for lifetime. Means once elected, now he can do anything. Might be he doesn't want to work for the welfare of the people. Might be he can start torturing people. So a lot of things can happen. Soon after, in 1966, he was overthrown by the military. Means what happened? Firstly, it got independence. Democracy was restored. Democracy was restored. Then what happened? Nkrumah got himself elected as the president for lifetime. And finally, military dictatorship had come. So they could not remain democracies for a long time. So this was all about the end of colonialism. Now this is the homework. Collect information on the debate. Now everyone, remembers about the Iraq invasion, right? Iraq invasion by the US Army. So you will be writing about it, the entire homework, that is collect information on the debate related to Iraq within the US and the UK. What were the reasons originally offered for the Iraq invasion by the President of US and the Prime Minister of UK? What were the reasons offered after the war? Go through it. If any query is there, you can contact me on your WhatsApp group. But yes, if you want to contact me between 8 to 1:30. Anyone who is sending messages after 1:30 will be removed from the group immediately. So kindly make a note of it. Thank you.